Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup.
Yes, hello everyone joining us at home. I'm your host, Tamara Ugolini, joined by our beautiful BC correspondent, my colleague, Drea Humphrey. And today is Monday, March the 6th, which is crazy to think that we're already into the first week of March. So if you're joining us, we're on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, Getter, and also live streaming on Twitter. So on certain platforms, which unfortunately doesn't include YouTube any longer, but on Rumble and Odyssey, you can give us a hyper chat or a super chat, I think it's called. And with those small monetary donations to help fund our independent, never relying on the Justin Trudeau Liberal government journalism, then we can also engage with our viewers and see what you would like to see more of, or just have casual chats. So feel free to go ahead and do that while you have Drea and I for the next hour discussing some crazy topics that are happening in Canada and abroad. That's loaded. Drea, what is up today? How are you doing?
Hi, Tamara. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I was quickly trying to look to see what day it was in the world because the great Menzoid Menzies always fills us in, but that's on its whether it's Drink Wine Day or not, which is an actual day. But no, I'm doing good. It's bright and early out here. We got good weather on the West Coast, aka the left coast, and I'm excited to be live.
Yeah, that's right. We have so many topics to cover, and you'll want to stick around to the very end because we're going to be bringing in none other than our favorite rebel, David Menzies, who is on the scene in a certain MP's riding, doing a little bit of a campaign tour and also catching up with some protesters. So we're going to bring him in at the very end of the live stream. And of course, you just never want to miss the stuff that will come out of David Menzies' mouth, inevitably and inherently. So because we have so much to get through, I guess we'll just get right into the day. And we are going to start it off with some more drag madness. So if you have been following our coverage of the cross-dressing caricature hypersexualization of women, this will not be news to you, but we have some creepy videos to share. And the first one is going to be a young girl performing at a drag show where she is receiving tips. So maybe we can just get right into it, throw right to that clip. Oh.
All right, we're gonna give you 60 seconds of lip sync.
This is textbook grooming here.
Yeah. I don't know if I want to watch anymore. There's so much wrong here. First when you're like, oh, there's a young girl performing at a drag show, you think like maybe they're bordering on, being a minor, but perhaps, moving into adulthood any day now, turning 18 or 20, 21. But this is, I don't know, how old would you say that child is? Like 6?
I don't know. She looks like 4 to 6 maximum, I think. And this is textbook classic grooming. And this is the main concern people have with this. People, including people from the LGBTQ community. I swear Steve Carell lives in my head. That where he's like, no. Like every time I watch one of these videos, inside my head, I'm just about to explode. But when you think of teens and things like that with sexual extortion, money is one of those things where even teens will do things, right, to get money to buy themselves. And here we are with this little girl, age 4 to 6, knowing if I move my body in a certain way, I can make some money.
these adults are going to throw money at me. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just grotesque, but also, isn't she dancing to that Nas Daily? No, not Nas Daily. I'm getting it confused with the guy who debates Avi, but
Yeah.
that song, and it's like where he's essentially lap dancing with Satan, and the whole thing is just, it's Satanism veiled
Yeah.
as like this inclusivity and tolerance yielding event that is validating or normalizing dancing for money to a young, very young, impressionable child who's like peak formative years here. This
Mhm.
is just to a song that is satanistic and by its very intent. The whole thing is just backwards and wrong. I can't even
Mhm.
believe. Yes, there it is. Oh, I hate. Oh, this video just gives me
Yeah.
the creep. So this is the song that this little
Mhm.
child is dancing to for money. For money.
Coincidence? I think not. I think not. Like, what's
And
going on here? Yeah.
yeah, well, that also just utter confusion. But if you oppose this, or if you denounce this, or if you think that there is something wrong with this, now we're seeing more and more that you risk being assaulted, physically intimidated by the very people who are propping this agenda and this norm, trying to normalize this up. It's crazy. So we have another clip here to show you
Yeah.
next of a violent assault by one of these drag event supporters to someone who was opposing it. It comes from our former colleague Kian Bexy at the Counter Signal.
Mhm.
Turn to the Savior! Turn away from the father of lies! Turn away from the father of lies!
And
then running away.
And so I saw some of the comments there. They're saying the police allowed that person to run away, and you could see them smirking. Like, that's the most disturbing part of all of it to me. Oh, wait, I'm mixing up two things. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The smirking hasn't happened yet. But the comment said that the police could have stopped that person from running and did not.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, it's the normalization that if you protest one thing, you're going to be treated a certain way by police. But if you protest the other way, and if it's going against this mob, um, then you're going to be targeted by police.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, the increasing politicization of the police and them towing the line and conforming to one narrative and not the other is becoming increasingly concerning in Canada. But the whole thing, like I said, you know, we just showed a clip of a young girl performing in front of adults who are tipping her with money for dancing to a Satanistic song. And if you oppose that, you will be assaulted by the very people who are trying to normalize it. Like, this is peak bizarro world, upside down, the reversal of the natural order. This is just insane. There's no other word for it.
Well,
I just think.
And what is it saying to actual pedophiles and child predators who are watching this? And like, I interviewed a counselor for sex offenders, including pedophiles, and he says even they are shocked that society is allowing this stuff to happen. But imagine you're watching things like, predators being able to get away in the children's swimming change rooms. You're watching people actually beat up people who oppose these types of things. What are you thinking as a predator? Like, this seems like a safe haven for you to go and get closer to children.
Yeah, it's really creepy and scary to think about as a parent with young children, boys, girls, whatever, the direction that this is going and trying to protect them. And then you have this budding phenomenon of the World Wide Web that is just even further increasing their risk and ability to access content that is so inappropriate that some parents just don't see an issue with and think it's normal and want to bring their children to these hypersexualized events. It's just bizarre.
I think a lot of them are living vicariously through their children, something parents do in a lot of different ways, whether it could be sports or pageants. I think some of them are saying, this is my way to show that I'm an in-person, I'm accepting, I'm loving, and they're guiding these children down this path.
Yeah, I'm like the cool in mom, because I'll let you go to this drag queen story hour and flaunt yourself for money at the age of 6. It's
wow.
My goodness. We used to jail these people. We used to bring them out into the street, and they would be tarred and feathered, and they would be jailed, and they would be reprimanded for putting their children at risk. And now, like, that's what I keep saying is, where is the Children's Aid Society on some of these situations that these children are in? Like, where are the child protective services that are meant to be? Oh, gross. You did a report on this, didn't you, Drea?
Yes, this is the baby raves that have been running for over a year in the UK and just got international backlash last week, just a few days ago, actually. Like, what is happening here is strip shows for babies. The parents are drinking alcohol as well, which is not what you would do at a story time event. It lowers your inhibitions. And if you know anything about child grooming, that's the whole goal. The goal is to have both the parents and the kids lower their inhibitions around you so you can be sexually inappropriate with kids. And that's all just happening within, 2 hours.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember going to the Mother Goose at the library, and it was like this wholesome little quaint librarian reading, Baba Black Sheep to your child. And that wasn't that long ago. And I still have young ones who I'm like, every time we go to a story hour, is it going to be all of a sudden like, surprise, we have drag queen X here to read, perverse content to your child. It is crazy that we even have to think that way as parents of young children. But as we see more peak hysteria occurring in our once civilized nation, we have a Calgary pastor. So many of you may be familiar with Pastor Derek Reimer, who was arrested over the weekend for protesting these sorts of events that were happening in the public library in Calgary. So that's in Alberta. And so when the protesters came out to kind of show their support for Pastor Reimer, they were essentially cattled by radical LGBTQ plus SL whatever supporters and Antifa. So this is happening over this past weekend in Canada, in Calgary. And we have another clip to share with you of that.
Out there! Where are you? Where are you? Where's the Calgary mayor? Your mayor's We're being threatened here, and we're getting in trouble for harassment? I don't think so. Hey, you guys aren't hanging out here, all right? We got cornered. You guys go the back way, all right? Are you gonna help us? Well, we'll have people monitor like we always have, right? You better escort us because these people are now violent. Yeah, and that's why you're in here, and that's why you're gonna go out there, and we'll have some members with us. How many? So loving, so tolerant, so full of hate, violent. Where love is love, right? Quality.
Yeah, and so as soon as you don't agree with them, all of a sudden this idea of love is love is just thrown out the window, and we are going to harass and intimidate you. So much for freedom of expression.
It's a sign of the radical left. I mean, we've seen this over and over. If you disagree with Black Lives Matter, if you disagree with even some of the COVID stuff, it often turns to violence instead of just a conversation about what is your opinion, what is my opinion. God forbid, could we find common ground on this issue at all? And that's one of the things I was saying too when I was getting, swarmed by Antifa type at a drag queen story time. It's like, love is love. Like, I thought this was love is love. What is going on here? And they just use those words to excuse the actual hate. But I think one of the common traits of Marxism, or one of the philosophies behind it, is that you just accuse the other people of doing what you're doing. And then that way, no one's looking at you. And that's what's happening here. You say you're acting in love, they're acting in hate. Therefore, you mask the hate that you are doing and the violence. Because let's be honest, these same types of groups like to say the words people opposing drag queen story time are saying are violence. And then they're doing actual physical violence instead.
Right. The mental gymnastics needed to try to conform to their ideation that thoughts equal violence somehow. Meanwhile, but unless you're actually on the ground, unless you go there and see it for yourself or report on it, as you have very bravely, thank you, Drea, for your work, because they are very intimidating and very just toxic and aggressive. And so by the mainstream media, only showing one side of what's happening, you would otherwise never know that this sort of thing takes place at these kinds of events, because it's just propped up under this flowery language. And again, the guise of being inclusive and tolerant and loving. So I think that's why it's really important for us also to have independent journalism in Canada, but also to be able to uphold the literal cornerstone of democracy, which is debate. And why can't we have these conversations and this scrutiny and this criticism and debate it like rational, reasonable adults without the violence and the aggression? I mean, because parents who have concerns they're not bigots. They're not far right transphobes. They have valid, legitimate concerns, and we should have a discussion about that.
Well, and that's why the discussion isn't happening, because the concerns are valid, they're logical, and they're not rooted in hate. And thus for just shut it all down so that the political agenda survives, right? And there's money, as you know, there's money thrown into these events as well. These drag queens wouldn't be showing up in almost all cases if they weren't getting paid by taxpayer dollars to be there. So.
Well, that's the really creepy part too, is when this happens at taxpayer funded institutions and is at the taxpayer's expense, then we all have a right to bring our voices to the table and have them heard. But regardless, I think at this same event here is where the Countersignal also caught footage of an old white guy, their words, not mine, spitting on a visible minority for having the opposite view.
Hey, shut the fuck up. I'm talking. No fucking language. Calgary's about to be transformed. You just came up to me. You came up to me. You were back there. You were back there, and then you just walked here. And then you just walked here. What do you want a man? He's a dog walking in your girl's bathroom? You point my finger at me. Fuck up now. You have no argument. Fuck up, you have no argument. No education, you're shaking? Hey! This guy just spat on me! This guy just fucking spat on me!
There's a smirking.
This guy spat on me, guys! Come on! No, it's not! He did.
It's so classless.
It is. And that's a hot drink, too. I'm assuming it's a coffee.
Well, yeah,
that's assault.
That's
assault. And this is because they know they can get away with this stuff, because they've been at some of these rallies. They see that the police are in their favor. The news is in their favor. And look at the unlawfulness that's happening from physical assaults in different ways. Like, oh, it's so gross. And that's what I was talking about with the smirking. If I don't know if we can play it back because it's really fast there, but if you look, the officers are smirking after that happens. They think it's hilarious.
Oh, I missed that part.
Yeah, it's really bad. Let's see if we can see it here. Look at it. Look,
Oh, yeah.
they're laughing about it. And he's like, hey, I just have been assaulted. This is the police in Canada. Calgary, right? Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, Calgary police. I mean, some might not be surprised.
Well, the mayor there is working on trying to make it, a hate crime just to protest these horrific events.
Which is part of the reason why Pastor Derek Reimer in Calgary is being held. He's being held in jail. He is currently detained for protesting a library-held drag queen story hour where he was actually assaulted. He was the one being assaulted. He didn't do any sort of physical violence toward anybody, but simply the act of being there in opposition is enough to have him. Here he is being assaulted by the attendees. Look, like he smashes his head on the ground there. And now he is the one being detained, if you can believe it. That's the state of affairs in Canada now. If you denounce this radical sexualized ideology for infiltrating your public institutions at your own taxpayer dollar expense. And I think we have a quick update also because he was in court this morning. Drea, I think you shared something there.
Right. So Sheila Gunn-Reid is in court and she gave us a breaking update. So she says Pastor Derek Reimer will remain in jail until at least March 14th. That will be his next bail review. That will be a whole 13 days in custody by then for peacefully protesting an all ages drag event. 14 days. I mean, this is the COVID pastors in Alberta all over again. If you ask me, it's the next thing, right? It's not just Christians, obviously, who take issues with this, people who are not religious as well. But I know that there's a lot of people in the Muslim community very concerned about what's happening here. I'm getting those emails and messages as well. And then in the US, you see some of them are actually leading protests against these events as well.
Right. This is no longer teetering on being a political prisoner. You're now a religious prisoner. And if you uphold your religious doctrine and view this as being inherently wrong and are concerned about it, then we're going to jail and detain you, even though you were the one being assaulted for your mere presence, questioning the appropriateness of this sort of event for children. Like, it is one thing to be a consensual adult and have a bunch of adults in the room and whatever, do what you're going to do on your own time. Said that over and over again. If you're a consensual adult, you want to engage in some provocative entertainment, whatever. These are children, and this is a pastor. That is literally his service to God that he is upholding. And then he was assaulted and jailed. I mean, the whole thing again is just madness. And so let's move on though. We could
let's let people know, because I'm sure some people are just so shocked that this is happening in Canada. And there is a way you can help Pastor Derek. If you go to savepastorderek.com, we're helping people direct the legal funds, if you want to donate towards that, to the Democracy Fund, who's taking on his legal fight to help him get out of this mess. So if you want to get behind that, please go to savepastorderek.com. Did I get the URL correct? Yes, I think so. But so you can check that out, and all of our coverage is up to date on there as well. So we will be covering the story very closely, which is already gaining international shock and horror.
Shock and awe. Okay, let's go to a quick ad break, and then we'll come back to the leader of the opposition wanting to sue Big Pharma.
Have you checked out the fresh new swag we have at rebelnewsstore.com? Like this nifty resistance trucker sweater. We have warm, cozy sweaters, t-shirts, mugs, hats, phone cases, you name it. Everything to fit your freedom-loving needs, or maybe even trigger a liberal family member or friend. And And for a limited time, you can use code Tamara10 at checkout to save 10% off of your total order. So head on over to rebelnewsstore.com, check out all of our new designs, make some purchases, and use code Tamara, that's Tamara, 10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Head on over, check it out.
You're
Surprise,
so cute,
surprise.
Tamara.
I have the trucker tee on.
She lives in it. No, you're so cute.
I actually do.
Yeah.
I love these sweaters. They're so comfortable. Like when you're just you want to just have a comfy day, which I'm doing on the live stream. But also my toddler absolutely loves this sweater. Actually, so you know what? It would be good for me to try to get some information because we don't currently have it available in child sizes, but it has trucks and tractors on it. So it, my kids, all of them, regardless of being a boy or a girl, they loved tractors and trucks as little toddlers. And so do you want to see more of these tees as our viewers? Do you want to see more of these tees available in child or toddler size? Let us know, because I personally want to see this in a child size, but we don't have it available right now. So if
we
you
do
would like
have
to see
some kids clothes,
yes.
we do have some kids clothes. Should I read a chat just before we jump into the next video, or?
Sure.
I guess we've got one.
If it relates,
we've got one.
It relates.
So for those of you just tuning in, if you want to connect with us and help contribute to our journalism, you can do so by doing a live chat at Rumble and Odyssey, I believe. And so this is from Spirit Whisperer 2021, who donates $20. Thank you very much. Says, as a survivor of sexual assault and child sex trafficking, I'm so sorry. As a child, I am absolutely appalled by the grooming of these young children. Child predators will attend these events and children are in danger. Absolutely, I agree with you so much. And if you want to shoot me an email, if you want to talk about that more and let the public know your side or your opinion on that, please go to drea.humphrey@rebelnews.com.
Yeah, thank you for speaking up about it. I think as more people are able to come forward with their experience, we can also prevent a lot of this from happening by knowing what to look for. And this stuff that we're seeing with the radical gender ideologies permeating schools and these institutions, this is textbook, as we've already went over all of that, but it's textbook grooming behavior, and it paves the way to normalize this sort of discussion and behavior in front of children. So anyway, we have now a video to share with you. The leader of the opposition party, Pierre Poilievre, is calling to sue Big Pharma. It might not be what you think it's about. So let's sort of the clip and then we'll talk about it.
Powerful, big pharmaceutical companies lied. They lied. They told our drug agencies in North America that their drugs were not addictive and that they were not lethal. And then they literally paid bonuses to the distributors of those drugs for the number of overdoses they could cause. McKinsey, Justin Trudeau's favorite consulting firm, whom he gave $100 million of contracts, actually wrote a strategy to turbocharge the sales of these drugs. And they preyed on working class people. People who had lost their jobs and lost hope went to their doctor with a sore back, and they were given these drugs. And found that it not only helped with the sore back, but helped with the way they were feeling about life. And they got more and more addicted until they overdosed and died. These drug companies knew exactly what they were doing. In the 90s, we sued the tobacco companies for the costs they put on our healthcare system. Now what we must do in Canada is what they've done in the United States. We need to sue these big pharmaceutical companies to make them pay the full price of the treatment and recovery. Those are the lawsuits. And we will do what Alberta is doing. We will double the number of treatment spaces so that we can take our brothers and sisters off the streets. We can detox them, give them counseling, give them hope, give them a chance to start their lives over. We can do it. We're going to save our brothers and sisters from this pandemic of drug abuse, aren't we?
I have so much to say here, but
I do too. I do too.
I can't believe, okay, so it's taken what, roughly 10 years? When did the
Yeah.
opioid crisis even begin? I think it was approximately 10 years ago.
Easy 10 years. Yeah.
So it's taken 10 years to try to gain some accountability from pharmaceutical companies. I mean, historically, good luck, because that hasn't traditionally gone well. And so I'm assuming that many people might have thought that the context there would be in relation to COVID-19.
Right.
And I have to be careful the way I word things because we're still on YouTube and, you know, community standards and all that jazz. But it's not. It's in regards to the opioid crisis, which if you live in Canada and North America, United States, it has not been immune from this either. But the increase in addiction and fatalities, which were exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, especially in your province of British Columbia and Alberta, they saw the massive casualties due to overdose and addiction because of the lockdowns and the public health measures actually caused a bunch of these deaths.
Yeah, we went up
deaths
58%.
of disparity.
Yeah. The first 3 months after the lockdowns, we went up 58% overdoses when everybody was staying home and staying safe and not working and getting $2,000 of CERB.
I was just going to say, yeah, you get your free $2,000 a month handout. Well, if you're somebody who's struggling with addiction and mental health disorders, then you're going to just take that money right away and, hey, look, I can go buy, you know, a huge, some hits here off of the street. But I think that trying to hold the pharmaceutical companies accountable is noble and would be amazing to see, because these people are trillionaires, really. They have increased their bottom lines exponentially, especially as the COVID-19 injection rollout has seen such sweeping success in developed nations. But the track record there isn't great. Historically speaking, Big Pharma, it's like a dent in their pockets if they are ever held accountable. And I would assume that the process to hold them accountable costs taxpayers anyway in our court systems, right? To try to garner any sort of monetary compensation from them. Well, first you have to pay lawyers and go through that process, and it would probably end up costing us more money in the long term. But also, I think it's important to start funding an initiative not on the backs of taxpayers that is not harm reduction. There is no data, no rationale to show that harm reduction actually reduces any sort of harm. So I think that Pierre Poilievre is on the right track here, but I have some serious reservations as to how efficient it will be going that route.
Right. Well, I think what you're seeing here, like you said, most people are probably thinking it was going to be about COVID, but I think this is Pierre's way of saying many people want me to go against the pharmaceutical company, and this is how I can discuss that safely. And as far as the cost involved and things like that, some battles are worth fighting, and sometimes I feel like it's the information that comes out. So I am for looking into this, but you're right, it has to be something that's feasible, that makes sense financially and things like that. But I am all for pursuing this and seeing what could come out of it on the path of it. And you're right about harm reduction. Those were my beautiful Vancouver streets that we were showing down there as well. There isn't evidence about that, and BC has just decriminalized drugs and things like that. Doesn't mean that people are going to stop being addicted just because of that, right? So you have to look at the mental health issues with this, and that's really where the funds need to be going, and that is the most urgent thing that we can do. And we saw that with the lockdowns. That was a mental health issue that happened. People were told, I'll give you a perfect example. I've worked with many people who struggle with addiction. And so what was happening in the lockdowns is you have these men and women, but let's just use a man as an example, just because that's who I knew the most of. And so they had been clean for a few years. They got themselves their job. They got their child back in their life for, every Saturday or what now. And their job was their identity. That was their symbol of, I've made it, I'm contributing to society. It doesn't even matter if it was a minimum wage job, they were on cloud 9 with that lifestyle. Then you told them their child wasn't in their bubble and they couldn't go to their AA meetings or see their mentors anymore. And again, they were sitting in these small rooms, subsidized rooms, and getting $2,000 and not even allowed to work when they were able to. And so that killed people. And that was mental health, right? So that just shows how important the mental health aspect of staying clean, staying recovered, and getting recovered is. It's a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. And the importance of community, right? Locking people down and
community.
isolating them from their communities
Right.
and their safety nets, just thrust them back into old habits. And now we're seeing the fallout of it. And people were saying stuff like this very early on in 2020. I mean, there was many people who could see the writing on the wall, but because we punish anyone who goes against the mainstream narrative and anyone who's a dissident, we disavow them and instead label them and slander them as some sort of conspiracy theorist, because we have that sort of normalization in our society. Those people were disregarded and ignored. And now it took 3 years to really pay attention and become normal to say these sorts of things. I mean, I can go back and find clips of me saying those almost verbatim words in April of 2020. But that was too taboo back then. But we want to bring David Menzies on in about 8 minutes. So we're just going to run through a couple topics really fast here, because it relates a little bit to this big pharma discussion having to do with the scariants, as they were called when they started to be rolled out. So we have this breaking story from the UK's health secretary, which is essentially like their health minister. That's what we would have here in Canada. Matt Hancock. And so he was recently busted for having WhatsApp communication, asking, and I think if we can pull up, I believe it was the Daily Mail article, where he discussed deploying a new virus variant to essentially terrorize the public into complying with whatever the government wants them to do and modify their behavior. And so I won't go through this whole article here, but if you're familiar with some of our reporting, and I've done a few stories on this, it really reinforces that the COVID madness and the hysteria that ensued was an exercise in behavior modification technique, utilizing industrial strength mind control techniques. So like we already mentioned, the lockdowns, the social isolation, using loaded language. So, like 2 weeks to flatten the curve, stay home, save lives, the new normal, all of these slogans that were repeated incessantly are part of a PSYOP, a psychological operation. And so we have now more and more mounting information that proves that the health cartel essentially conducted a PSYOP on the population to nudge their compliance with whatever it was that the government wanted them to do or how they wanted them to behave.
Matt Hancock saying, when do we get to frighten the pants off the citizens with the next variant? This is nuts. That's what we were living through over and over. Each wave, it's this wave. We never talked like that about any flu before. We never, every time it was a variant, did we talk about it, but it was so effective at keeping people in line. And that's what it was. We lived through the biggest experiment, unethical experiment of all times, and it's still going. And information like this, the reason why it got as far as it was is because of the state-backed legacy media. If they would just let everybody know that information we just saw in that article, if everybody reported on it, this type of stuff would have been shut down immediately. But because they too are in cahoots with with everybody, then it keeps on running. This is a really huge story.
It is. And, something that I was discussing at least as far back as June 2022, I just put a clip there in our channel. If Olivia could pull it up, it's of Teresa Tam, our health overlord. So basically our version of Matt Hancock, our chief medical officer of health, who was sitting at a World Health Organization's assembly called Behavior Science for Better Health. And she's literally So it's a
Wow.
strategic roundtable, and she's literally discussing these nudges that they will put on the population to nudge them toward healthy behavior and reward them with badges. Like have a listen. This is
Yeah.
from the horse's mouth.
Evaluation and science, I think it's important when applications are being stood up that there is an actual integrated evaluation and research aspect to them. Otherwise, you have no idea whether they work or they don't work. Coming back to work. Coming back to.
Oh, we're having some
Coming back to.
technical difficulties with the clip here. Anyway, you can go back and find, I did a full
Yeah.
report on that. You can find some of my clips. Maybe I'll just retweet that one. And then anybody who's joining us and wants to see it for themselves, you can head on over to my Twitter at Tamara Ugo and check it out for yourself. But we also have a quick clip. And we're running tight on time here because we're going to get Menzies in at 1:45. But we have the CEO of Moderna admitting, and again, looks like the conspiracy theorists are up like 100 points to none because they've been saying this for so long. Moderna is admitting that they were researching and had already developed COVID-19 vaccines in 2019.
I think I
And I'm going to go with Stefan Bansal. Let's talk about vaccine development, because we've heard how it happened, obviously, with COVID-19 starting from 2022 and how extraordinary the process was also in terms of the speed. How is development, adoption and scaling of vaccine going on when it comes for different variants and subvariants? Because this is one of the big concerns as we're all here now and we're discussing, we understand the context, and this is a great deal.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for having me on the panel. So the great news versus 2020, where we are today, is we have manufacturing capacity. As Seth knows, when the pandemic happened, Moderna had made 100,000 doses in 2019 for the whole year. And I remember walking after Davos into the office of my head of manufacturing, and I say, how will we make 1 billion doses next year? And he look at me a bit funny, say, what? I say, yeah, we need to make 1 billion doses next year. There's going to be a pandemic.
So they made $1 billion at everybody else's expense, and now any injuries that ensue as a result are taxpayer funded. Well, the billionaires get to ride off into the sunset. We have 2 other bureaucratic videos to share with you that just shows how completely inept they are. One is discussing the cost of yet another bill, Bill C-18. So that's another Trudeau Liberal censorship, internet censorship bill. So there's Bill C-11 and Bill C-18. And if you want to find out more about either one, we have a special campaign at stopthecensorship.com where we include coverage of both of those sneaky and pesky pieces of legislation that we don't even know how much they're going to cost, as per this clip.
Thank you, Mr. Waugh, for the question, and Chair, if I may.
Yes.
So, Mr. Waugh, I won't speak to the PBO report, which is the source of the numbers that you cited. That was not a department-led initiative. The internal modeling that we did when we tabled the bill and mentioned in our technical briefings was more around $150 million impact.
The government estimates that annually approximately $215 million Canadian in compensation will go to from digital platforms to eligible news businesses in Canada. Anticipated impact of C-18 is significant, regardless of whose financial estimates one uses. The Parliamentary Budget Office, for example, estimated the bill could result in $329 million in total compensation for new businesses. But the working principle is about 30%, 30 to 35% of the news expenditure.
It's so painful to watch these bureaucrats try to figure out what's going on. I can't even believe that they're who is in charge. If you ever watch CPAC, our government parliamentary broadcasting corporation, it's painful. And this just further reinforces how inept the bureaucrats really are. they don't even know how much a piece of legislation like this is going to cost. They can't attest to anything, it seems, these days.
No, and I heard you say it, eligible news,
Yes.
what's that we know what that's gonna look like as well. But I wonder if they even read everything fully through, or they just kind of skim through and they're like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to say. And then half of the time later, they're like, oh shoot, what did we even just push forward? Because that seems similar to with the conversion therapy bill, with all of the conservatives signing it. I know MP Leslyn Lewis actually went on record when I asked her in the interview, actually said she, regretted signing it, right? It was confusing and things like that. So do they actually read this stuff?
Well, and a lot of it is very ambiguously worded. So yeah, it's largely open to interpretation, and it's not clear. And that's what the Liberals, I always go back to. They start things off with, let me be clear. And then they're, clear as mud, and they make no sense. And it's just word salad jargon. But that also is reflective of how, from what I've seen, they put forward legislation as well. It's just ambiguously worded and fluffy, flowery language. And then you're like, but what does this actually mean on the ground as it's being implemented? And so Bill C-18 and Bill C-11 are very similar in that regard. And then, more inept bureaucrats, we have another video here, a clip to share with you if you can get through it. I have a hard time. Is our mental health minister, Carolyn Bennett, discussing, I don't know, I guess we'll see. I still can't figure it out.
And the corner here at Yonge and Eglinton that we share with Rob Oliphant, this is a very important threesome that we tend to share a lot of ideas and support and do lots of things together. So it's great to be here, and it is about all of us in this shared work of improving the health of all Canadians. And
public speaking lessons from Biden. Clearly, she's been learning from Biden.
Maybe Carolyn Bennett needs some mental health support. I don't know. She seems a little bit delusional. Okay, so we have David coming in. He's going to be joining us out in the field. So we'll catch up to see where he is and why. But first, we're just going to go to a quick ad break while we rejig our video stream. So stay tuned. We'll bring back David Menzies after this quick ad.
I am speaking to you at a moment of grave crisis, when violent and fanatical men are attempting to destroy the unity and the freedom of Canada.
But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close,
as democracy flourishes in Canada,
we don't always agree, and that's okay.
Because individual liberty is cherished in Canada.
Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly.
It has now been demonstrated to us by a few misguided persons.
After evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country,
just how fragile a democratic society can be,
it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe.
These are matters of the utmost gravity, and I want to tell you what the government is doing to deal with them.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
The public's legitimate right to know why the government proclaimed an emergency and whether the actions it took were appropriate.
It is our view that there was no justification whatsoever to invoke the Emergencies Act.
It's so tough to watch. There's no reason for that. They were literally running the horses through the crowd.
The police came straight to me and he targeted me and he took his gun of tear gas and he actually shot me directly in my legs.
Was it worth invoking the Emergencies Act, ma'am, to trample on the rights and freedoms of Canadians?
Why do you think excessive honking means that the government should strip citizens away from their rights?
Our next and final witness is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Order à l'ordre.
All right, so joining us in a few moments will be none other than our rebel favorite, David Menzies. He is out in the field right now at, there he is, at the Don Valley North constituency office of Minister Dong. Hi, David, how are you doing out there?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, ladies.
Of course. So tell our viewers a little bit elaborate a little bit on where you are and what you're doing there.
Yes, Tamara, this is the constituency office for Han Dong. And Han Dong, as you know, was one of the cherry-picked candidates by the communist regime in Beijing to be a Liberal member of Parliament. So go the allegations of a CSIS whistleblower. It's been in the news cycle for a week now. And, oh, by the way, we did make a house call to get his side of the story. Can you imagine the constituency office is closed today? I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that there's going to be a demonstration at 4 p.m. today, but likely a coincidence. So in any event, Drea, as the story goes, Han Dong had a Chinese seniors go to vote for him, and not to leave anything to chance, in magic marker, his name was written on their arms. That's the new whiz-bang tattoo for 2023, isn't it? Han Dong. And then it gets worse. And I don't know how they could enforce this, because we have a secret ballot in Canada, well, for the time being, but Chinese foreign students were told to get to the polls and vote for him as well. And if they had any kind of problems in the democracy of that, well, guess what? They were threatened with having their visas revoked. And lo and behold, Han Dong gets in. We also know from the allegations from CSIS that the goal was to get rid of conservative MPs that had a not so favorable view of China. And allegedly, they were very successful in that. 9 conservative MPs allegedly lost their seats because of that interference. And of course, Justin Trudeau, they wanted him to retain, this is going back to 2021, of course, retain his minority government. I find that one fascinating, ladies, because when you think about it, yeah, Justin Trudeau's our boy, but we want to keep him on a short leash in case he walks off the reservation and we have to rig the election, presumably in favor of another party. So they like him, but they don't like him all that much. Now, it's kind of insulting, I would think, to Justin, because 10 years ago in 2013, he told an all-woman meeting in Toronto that he had basic admiration in his heart for the dictatorship of China in terms of getting things done. It is absolutely outrageous if these allegations are true. This is Watergate on steroids, all right? This, if you think of 2 of the basic tenets of having a sovereign nation, number 1 is border security. Well, Justin's thrown that into the toilet bowl and flushed twice, given what's happening at Roxham Road. You can come into this country anytime, and it might even be put up in Niagara Falls, the honeymoon capital of the world. Nothing but the best for our illegal aliens. And the second thing is election integrity. I mean, if the vote is rigged, what is that? That's not a democracy anymore. That's a banana republic dictatorship. Yeah, I know we don't grow bananas in Canada, but let's call our Dominion a maple syrup dictatorship. So this has to be investigated. There has to be a public inquiry. But as you know, Justin's not committing to that. And the cherry on this rancid sundae is Justin Trudeau saying, if you have a problem with Han Dong or anyone else, and if you're bringing up the word China or Chinese, you are a racist. This is coming from the mouth of blackface McGroper himself. I mean, I'm sorry. The last thing we need to be lectured on by Justin Trudeau is racism.
Yeah, 100%. And because he's... sorry, Drea, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is anybody commenting that's walking by? What's the feedback like?
You know what, Drea? We just got set up minutes before we arranged this. It is a very boring and bland office tower in North York, and I think the real drama will take place come 4 o'clock when we have a demonstration here. I have no idea how big this is. As you know, it could be 1,000 people. It could be a dozen people, right? So we'll see at 4. We're hanging around until that time for sure.
Nice.
But because Justin Trudeau isn't taking any of this election interference seriously, we have launched this campaign. And so you can find out more at firedong.com, where this billboard truck that's behind David, you can see there. Maybe, David, you can show our viewers a bit better of a frame there of the truck itself. And what's happening behind you. Oh, there it is. Look at that beautiful bus.
Yes. And by the way, if I may, Tamara, I'd like to appeal to our viewers to, if they can, chip in $1 or $2. It pays for the rental of this truck. We want to make sure that something is being done on this. I mean, if this is indeed the case that Han Dong got into Parliament as a Chinese, I guess, influenced actor, that's outrageous. And I got to tell you, ladies, there's grist for the mill in that regard, because on 2 occasions when there was a liberal bill to condemn what China was doing to the Uyghur Muslims, which is pretty much a genocide, rounding them up and putting them in concentration camps. Guess what? Mr. Dong, at the last minute, exited the House so that he would neither vote yay or nay. So the Mandarin puppet masters back in Beijing, they're getting good value for their little puppet Dong here. He's an obedient little sheep. He will never dare criticize the sugar daddies in China that got him into the position where he is now.
So this billboard truck will be circling the constituency office for the better part of this afternoon then. And there's a protest scheduled, I heard 4 p.m.
That is correct, 4 till 5, Tamara. And I will probably, it's pretty desolate around here. In fact, the city hasn't even shoveled the sidewalks from Friday's storm, so people are literally walking on the street. I guess the city of Toronto snowplows have better things to do, like clearing the bike paths that nobody's using. But I digress. We'll probably bugger off to Fairview Mall and to the mall at Lawrence and Don Mills and drive the truck around there. There'd probably be more pedestrian traffic there, and I understand those malls are in his riding. So it'd be good to see, the reaction we get about all these incredible allegations. Now, keep in mind, I forgot to say, ladies, Prime Minister Trudeau, he's going to get to the bottom of this scandal, which is to say he's going to do a witch hunt at CSIS and find out who the snitch was to release this information. He is literally going to shoot the messenger as opposed to addressing this scandal. And that also, I think, is scandalous.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, David, for joining us here. And we'll look forward to your full report and seeing the protesters turn out. Stay warm out there.
We'll try. David. Thank you so much. Have a great day, ladies. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Oh, that's so fun. Okay, well, we're nearing the end of the stream, but let's just throw to a quick ad and while we recalibrate the video, and we'll just come back for a few minutes before we say goodbye.
Oh, hey guys, thanks for watching the live stream and sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to pop on to tell you about this. Again, it's rebelnewsstore.com, coupon code Sheila10 for 10% off at checkout.
If you want to look good and shine like me, you can do so at our store. Go to rebelnewsstore.com. On this website, you have so much different style to wear, as this one, my favorite one, Justin Castro. With my code Alexa10, you will have 10% off on your next purchase. So don't hesitate, go now and look so good like me.
Have you checked out the fresh new swag we have at rebelnewsstore.com? Like this nifty resistance trucker sweater. We have warm, cozy sweaters, t-shirts, mugs, hats, phone cases, you name it. Everything to fit your freedom-loving needs, or maybe even trigger a liberal family member or friend. And for a limited time, you can use code Tamara10 at checkout to save 10% off of your total order. So head on over to rebelnewsstore.com, check out all of our new designs, make some purchases, and use code Tamara, that's Tamara 10 at checkout for 10% off your order. Head on over, check it out.
Sweater. All right, before we sign off, we've got a few chats to talk about. So the first one's from Court Mocker, who donates $20. Thank you so much. Says, do your homework. Duchess Lois of Alberta, Savannah Meadows, Tuliper Ritchie, Chloe Cole, Zachary Zulak, Deborah Rosenquist, etc., etc. And then this person has linked a Castanet News article. It says that a man dons kangaroo suit for a solo protest outside of Vernon Courthouse in Vernon News. So a man in a kangaroo suit is carrying a large sign that caught the attention of people driving in Vernon. So he's holding a sign about a kangaroo. I am not familiar with this at all. So, but I suppose that's why Court Mocker's saying do your research. Do you know anything about this, Tamara? It's in my neck of the woods. Okay,
there you go.
I'll take a look.
You'll have to do some homework. Yeah. Do your homework.
Thanks.
Court Mocker. I'm assuming that they're making a mockery of the courts somehow with the kangaroo suit and, the kangaroo and the kangaroo court situation.
Right.
So we'll have to look a little bit further into it. Sounds like a bit of a prank rather than something to be taken maybe seriously.
Yeah, I think so. And Laird Kintyre, sorry if I said your name wrong, donates $5. Thank you so much. And says, why can't conservatives in the live chat accept that some trans persons can be conservative? Absolutely. I hope that shedding light on this coverage isn't doing what I almost think the intention is, to keep us divided, right? And so it's not... when they hijack the LGBTQ community to push these agendas, we have to remember that agenda is not representative of everyone in there. So thank you so much for sharing that output. And let's be mindful of that in the comments. And the last one from Kenzie67 donates $3. Thank you. Says, our taco says, how in the hell can Chinese students vote in Canada? Unless you are a citizen of Canada, nobody should be eligible to vote. Not one. Have you looked into how that happened? So according to the articles that I read, that's actually not true. I thought it was as well, but apparently if you are residing in that state, in some circumstance, you can vote there, which I was shocked to read myself. But I don't think it's a big scandal, unfortunately. So.
No, unfortunately, it's clearly happening and it's alive and well. And even if you have family members connected, so even if you are a Canadian citizen, if you have family members connected to the Chinese Communist Party, there's a lot of gray area there. And then, of course, there's that inherent kind of allegiance that you will always have. And is held over your head if you don't comply with certain things that the regime wants you to do or certain tactics that they want you to follow.
Your family's back in China, so you can't mess around.
Yeah, exactly. So it's very, very twisted, and there's a lot of moving parts and elements in there that, we could probably never even fully be informed of because we are not within that group of people. We're not part of the Chinese Communist Party. And so that's why it's so important for whistleblowers to be able to come forward and offer them the protection that they deserve for coming forward on things like this, because it comes with great personal sacrifice and even sacrifice of family members that may be in more vulnerable situations. So with that, we're 5 minutes over. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope that you enjoyed our live stream, and head on over to firedong.com and check out the reports from David Menzies as they come out with that hilarious billboard truck and the protests that will happen later this afternoon. And of course, join us same time and place, maybe not us as Andrea and I, but another set of rebels tomorrow to discuss the news of the day then. And as David Menzies would say, stay sane.